She stood on the lonely rancher's porch with two frightened children clinging to her dress. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't asking for pity. With tears in her eyes, she whispered only 6 heartbreaking words, "Please, let us stay. We'll earn every meal." The rancher looked at the hungry children, then made a decision that shocked the entire valley. What began as one simple act of kindness became a story of sacrifice, dignity, and a family that neither of them expected to find. Stay until the very end, because this unforgettable Wild West story proves that the greatest blessings often arrive wearing worn-out boots. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more heartwarming Wild West stories of hope, love, and second chances. The golden light of late autumn stretched across the endless prairie as Daniel Walker finished repairing the front gate of his lonely ranch. At 43 years old, Daniel had spent most of his life working the land with his own hands. His ranch was successful, but after losing his parents years earlier and never marrying, the large farmhouse had become painfully quiet. Every evening he returned to an empty dinner table, believing loneliness was simply the price of surviving on the frontier. As the sun slipped behind the distant mountains, an unexpected knock echoed across the porch. Daniel opened the weathered wooden door. Standing before him was a young widow wrapped in a faded brown shawl. Her dress was dusty from weeks of travel, and beside her stood 2 exhausted children. A little boy no older than 8 and his younger sister, who tightly held her mother's hand. Their faces revealed days without proper rest, yet their eyes still carried quiet hope. The woman lowered her head respectfully. "My name is Sarah," she said softly. "I'm sorry to trouble you." Daniel noticed the children's worn boots and the empty wagon parked near the road. "You've traveled far." She nodded. "My husband passed away last winter. We lost our farm, then our home." The little girl shivered in the cold evening wind. Sarah took a deep breath before speaking the words that broke Daniel's heart. "Please, let us stay." She quickly continued before he could answer. "We don't want charity. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, milk cows, work in the garden. My son can help with horses. We'll earn every meal." Daniel remained silent. It wasn't pride speaking. It was dignity. She wasn't asking someone else to carry her burdens. She was simply asking for the chance to carry them herself. Looking into the children's tired eyes reminded Daniel of something his own father had once told him. When God sends someone to your gate in need, He may also be sending you the blessing you've been praying for. Without another word, Daniel stepped aside. "This ranch has room." The widow looked up in disbelief. "For all of us." Daniel smiled gently. "For your whole family." The children could hardly believe it. The little girl whispered, "Mama, does this mean we're safe?" Sarah's eyes filled with grateful tears. "For tonight," Daniel replied, "you're home." Inside, the farmhouse felt warmer than it had in years. Sarah immediately offered to prepare supper using the simple food already in the pantry. The children helped gather firewood without being asked. Daniel watched quietly. Most people who needed help expected comfort first. This family searched for work before rest. After supper, Sarah carefully washed every dish, while her son swept the floor and her daughter folded blankets beside the fireplace. "You've already done enough," Daniel told them. Sarah smiled softly. "My husband always said, a grateful heart should have busy hands." Those simple words stayed with Daniel long after everyone had gone to bed. As he sat alone beside the fading fire, he realized something remarkable. For the first time in many years, the ranch no longer felt empty, it felt alive. Yet none of them knew that the coming winter would test every promise they had made, and reveal that true family is not always born by blood, but by kindness, sacrifice, and hearts willing to stand together. Winter settled over the valley, covering the ranch with fresh snow and testing everyone who lived there. Yet instead of bringing hardship alone, it revealed the true character of the people under Daniel's roof. Before dawn each morning, Sarah was already awake, baking fresh bread, preparing breakfast, and mending worn clothes beside the warm glow of the fireplace. She never waited to be asked. Her son Thomas helped Daniel feed the horses, repair fences, and chop firewood, while little Emma gathered eggs, carried water, and filled the lonely farmhouse with cheerful laughter. Day after day, the family worked together, and the ranch slowly became stronger than it had ever been. Daniel often watched them from a distance, amazed that people who had lost almost everything still found reasons to smile. Sarah never spoke about her suffering unless someone asked. She believed that dignity was not found in complaining, but in continuing to move forward with faith and honest work. As Christmas drew near, news spread through the valley that several neighboring families were struggling after an early blizzard destroyed barns and left many without enough food for winter. Some ranchers closed their gates, fearing they would not have enough supplies for themselves. But Sarah quietly packed baskets with bread, vegetables, blankets, and preserved meat. Daniel looked at the supplies with concern. "If we give away this much," he said gently, "our own winter will be harder." Sarah smiled kindly. "My husband always believed that when we share what little we have, somehow God makes it enough." Without another word, Daniel hitched the wagon. Together they visited every struggling family in the valley. Thomas helped unload firewood. Emma handed blankets to frightened children with a bright smile. The grateful families could hardly believe that the widow, who had once arrived with nothing, was now helping others survive. Before long, neighbors who had witnessed their generosity began bringing their own supplies. One rancher donated hay, another shared flour. A blacksmith repaired broken tools without charging a penny. Soon the entire valley worked together, proving that kindness spreads farther than fear ever can. One freezing evening, a powerful snowstorm swept across the mountains. A frightened horse galloped into the ranch yard without its rider. Daniel immediately recognized the saddle belonging to an elderly rancher who lived alone several miles away. Without hesitation, he prepared his horse to search through the blizzard. Sarah stepped forward and quietly placed his heavy winter coat around his shoulders. "You shouldn't go alone," she whispered. "I can't leave a neighbor out there," Daniel replied. Thomas insisted on joining him, but Daniel gently shook his head. "Your mother needs you here." For hours, Daniel searched through the deep snow until he finally discovered the elderly rancher trapped beneath a fallen tree. With great effort, he pulled the injured man onto his horse and brought him safely home. When they reached the ranch, Sarah already had warm soup waiting, dry blankets by the fire, and medicine prepared. She cared for the injured man throughout the night, as though he were family. By morning, word of Daniel and Sarah's courage had spread across the valley. The townspeople gathered outside the ranch, thanking them not only for saving a life, but for reminding everyone what true neighbors should be. Looking around at the smiling faces, Daniel realized something extraordinary. The lonely house that had once echoed with silence had become a place where hope, compassion, and love welcomed everyone who crossed its doorstep. And deep within his heart, he began to understand that the greatest blessing of all had arrived the evening a widow quietly pleaded, "Please let us stay." Spring arrived, and with it came new life across the ranch. Green grass covered the fields, wildflowers bloomed along the fences, and the laughter of Sarah's children echoed through the valley. The lonely farmhouse that had once felt empty was now filled with warmth, hope, and the joy of family. Daniel no longer returned to silence after a long day's work. Every evening, a hot meal, smiling faces, and grateful hearts welcomed him home. One afternoon, the townspeople gathered at the ranch for a community celebration. Families whose lives had been touched by Sarah's kindness came carrying homemade bread, quilts, flowers, and small gifts. The elderly rancher Daniel had rescued stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "This family arrived here with nothing," he said, "yet they gave more love than many who had everything." Everyone applauded. Daniel then turned toward Sarah and gently took her hands. "The day you knocked on my door," he said softly, "I thought I was giving your family a second chance. But the truth is, you gave one to me." He reached into his pocket and held out a simple silver ring that had belonged to his mother. "Sarah, this ranch has become a home because of your kindness. Will you stay here forever, not as a guest, but as my wife?" Tears streamed down Sarah's face as Thomas and Emma smiled with excitement.
"Yes,"
she whispered, "with all my heart." The children rushed forward and hugged them both as the valley erupted in joyful cheers. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of gold, reminding everyone that the greatest blessings often begin with a single act of compassion. From that day on, the ranch became known as the home where no hungry traveler was ever turned away, and Daniel and Sarah taught their children that true wealth is never measured by land or cattle, but by kindness, sacrifice, dignity, and the courage to give someone a second chance. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that one act of kindness can change a life forever. See you in the next heartwarming Wild West story.